All right, the property prequel, be in the know before you buy. The cross man, here he is.
It's Rams. What's happening, my man?
Mate, it's bubbling. It's bubbling. I always love giving a quick indication where we're at in the market. Probably one of our biggest weeks, probably in the last 6 months since, I reckon, May, it was a standstill. I reckon we had our busiest week since then. So It's moving into the whole spring vibe, I guess. So I'm just noticing inquiries up. Agents are moving a bit quicker to do the deal. I'm realising I need to put a bit of urgency for my clients again. So it's exciting. I think that's good because confidence is in the market and in the air, especially for good locations, good assets on the coast at the moment. Are you seeing the sort of same thing?
Yeah, totally. It's interesting, isn't it? Because the market can change so quickly, can't it? You know, when things are humming along and people, it opens and prices are high, and then all of a sudden it's like someone just turns a tap off. And as agents, you sort of go, geez, where do they all go? But then on the flip side, as you're saying, all of a sudden they can come out of hibernation and we're on again. So, mate, I'm seeing a bit of that myself. And, a bit of interesting one for you last week. You jumped on the podcast, bit of a Super League podcast that we've that'll drop. There's obviously dropped on our platform and good chat around your own personal journey.
Yeah, mate, it was really good. Had some really good feedback. I always like to give a little insight on personal life. Obviously run a buyer's agency, but I'm also been a property investor since my early 20s and shared some really key tips I've learnt now being a decade in the investing game and realising I've gone through maybe 1.5-2 cycles now and understanding that that word compound. I'm starting to get it now, compound interest. Yep. So if you didn't listen to that one, give it a listen. Jumped on the Pizza and Property podcast with Todd Sloan. It's one of the biggest podcasts in Australia in the investment space. And that one's really aligned to, I guess, investors and just diving a bit deeper. So it was a good one. But mate, today's going to be an absolute cracker.
Today's big.
It's a big one. We just keep snagging it's the footy analogy, right? We you play what's in front and then mate, you land a key signing. We got to act quickly, right?
Well, I was thinking on the drive here, I was thinking about rugby league analogies because we do love to use them, and I won't give away who we got at the moment, but it's a bit of a Wayne Bennett for mine. Just a real key mentor that's very well known in the industry, done a lot of things, won a few premierships.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. I was just laughing because you said Wayne Bennett. I was thinking more Craig Bell, maybe the age thing.
I was just thinking about the premierships.
I'm sure he'd be thinking he's a young fresh energy, and mate, he holds that. But today we got Dane Atherton, who's principal owner, director owner, I guess, of the Harcourts Coastal
Super
brand.
Coach.
Super coach of the Harcourts Coastal brand. You know, you'd be sleeping under a rock if you didn't know Harcourts Coastal. So one of the biggest. Not only Australia won the global award.
We love awards in real estate, don't we?
Oh.
But we did win the #1 international franchise for Harcourts, which was
huge
this year. Never been done by an Australian office, so it was one of those special awards for us. It was something we've been working on for a long time.
Oh, it's unreal, and I know he doesn't love praise, but I guess we're just trying to highlight for the one or two people that would know Dane. It's to understand that. Listen in because there's a bit of experience on the table here. So Dane, mate, thanks for dropping by.
Pleasure. I love those analogies, boys. I don't know about that, but we'll go with it.
Yeah. For anyone who doesn't know, Crossy does a bit of NRL commentating, so you might hear a few little footy analogies every now and again. He's good for one, off the cuff.
Yeah, it's good. I've been looking forward to this one because I've admired Dane from afar for a long time. Obviously, been in the property game in different sort of avenues or channels or different sort of roles, but always knowing of Dane. And one thing I've really, I suppose, admired from afar is Dane's ability to build really good teams. But also, and I'm interested to know actually whether you've done this purposely or what, but you've always sort of flown under the radar in your own profile, even though everyone within the industry knows you well, but from the outside looking in, you're not one of those sort of high-flying guys that everyone knows, oh, geez, look at this guy. But internally in the industry, everyone knows you. Was that a conscious decision, I suppose, or has that just sort of happened as a byproduct?
Yeah, I think it's more of a byproduct of not actually being a listing and selling principal.
Yep.
So I think if you're a listing and selling principal and my name was on the door and every realestate.com ad or every sign had my name up the top, like McGrath's back in the day, John McGrath, that would have elevated his profile, huge industry titan. And you see some of our independents now on the coast that do have that. For me, it's not about me. It's about the agents and how we can elevate their profile. So obviously you've got to have a spokesman and you've got to have someone out there in the market, speaking for the company and being an advocate. But I share that now with Rob Ford in our business. So it wasn't so much intentional as it was a byproduct of actually elevating the agents' profiles.
Yep.
Yeah, it's unreal. So we'll dive into, because you mentioned it, I'm really interested to know around the team structure and the business acumen. But mate, where did it all start? Like, where are you from, and how'd you get into the industry?
Well, how far back do you want to go,
mate? Let's.
I was born in Mackay, believe it or not.
Oh, you're Mackay lad.
I know.
That town.
It gives you cred when you say that,
Yeah.
when you're from North Queensland.
Yeah.
But then people get to know me, no, mate, you're a Gold Coaster. So born in Mackay, I was only there a couple of years, but we moved to the Gold Coast when I was 3 or 4 years old.
Oh, okay,
Yeah, grew up in Ashmore, so went to primary school in Ashmore State School. And then for whatever reason, my mum and dad wanted us to go to boarding school in Ipswich Grammar.
Oh, you IGS boy.
Yeah, mate.
Oh,
yeah. So you're going to find out things today, Shravs.
Unbelievable.
So I went to IGS and played Union, and I played for the Bevel Swifts, mate.
Did you really? Yeah.
So played Friday nights Swifts, which was a learning curve getting out of the sanctuary of Ipswich Grammar, getting on the Ipswich train, right, at night, going to training.
Different scene.
I was lucky to hold on to my Nikes. But it was awesome. It was awesome. And I love that. The great thing about Ipswich Grammar is that you're competing against GPS schools, but you've still got that grounded, working class, awesome sort of environment that Ipswich is. It's a great town and great school. And then from there, I kind of I worked out that I wasn't going to be a doctor, or I wasn't going to be, a lawyer, even though my brother, believe it or not, is a doctor and a lawyer.
Yeah,
He's a psychiatrist now, but he's both. So he was the academic, and my other brother's a people person. And I did work experience in grade 11. While at Ipswich, I went home to the Gold Coast and did work experience with Runaway Bay in grade 11, because my best friend Buzz, who I went to primary school with, his mum and dad were actually real estate agents. And I thought, geez, this is cool. And then I did this work experience in grade 11, and the guy that I think his name was Julian someone, I don't think he's in the industry anymore, and I said, mate, how much do you earn? He said, a couple of $100,000 a year. And I said, so he's driving a Honda Prelude. Do you remember them?
I do.
Yeah.
Absolute gun car.
Yeah.
And I'm like, Honda Prelude, couple of $100,000 a year. Did you go to uni? No. What do you do? Mate, we just, we list property and we sell property and we talk to people and we negotiate. I thought, this is for me.
Yeah.
This is for me. And my mum took me to prize homes, and I still love property. And then I love property, love people, match the two. I tried psychology for a year or two at uni, because I thought I'll give it a go. Quickly realised that it wasn't necessarily about having coffees and talking about problems. It was actually about statistics and all of those things. And then I landed a cadetship with Lambert Smolin on the Gold Coast with Shane Smolin and Rod Lambert, and worked with a guy called Andrew Gibbons, who was a gun agent in Sydney but moved to the Gold Coast later in his life. Learned a lot, and then became a full-time auctioneer for Remax Australia. Was the chief auctioneer for Remax Australia at the age of 25, I think I was.
Wow.
With a guy called Don Marion, who recruited me into that, and he was a huge influence on me. You know how it's always great when someone comes into your life and they're kind of like your business dad?
Yeah.
He was my business dad,
Yeah,
and he had a massive impact. And there's plenty of stories about him.
Yeah.
But he shaped my mindset, and I think he was a big contributor to my career. And then from there, auctioneering training full time, and then my wife and I moved to the coast. We had a premonition. We wanted to move back to the coast. I'll tell you what.
So were you coming down from Ipswich?
I left Ipswich when I left school.
Yes. Okay.
Moved to Brisbane. And then we'll move to the coast, then back to Brisbane.
Yes. And then you got into that cadetship and all that.
Yeah, and then went into the cadetship, and then to Remax. Then I was living in Brisbane.
Yeah.
And I was running through Annerley one day, because that's where I lived.
Yeah.
And I was running through this park, which is really more of a drain. You know the one I mean? And no disrespect to Annerley.
Yeah.
And then we came down to the Gold Coast on the weekend, and I'm like running along the beach, and I'm like, why am I running in a drain every morning? this is amazing.
Yeah.
And I said to my wife, why don't we live on the Gold Coast? And she said, well, there's no reason why we can't with our business. All we have to do is travel. And that was moving back to the coast. I think that was 2006, 2007 was a huge, great decision for us.
Just wanted to ask you, Dane, so with your work experience in year 11, how much of an influence was doing that week or 2 weeks, whatever it was, into you going real estate full-time? Eventually, obviously, the psychology path started, but then if you don't do that work experience, do you reckon you still land in real estate? Was that a really important moment, do you feel?
Well, I think the fact that I wanted to do it showed me that the spark was already there. It was definitely very influential in seeing young people. There was young people in that office doing it. So I thought, wow, okay, you can, because I always had this notion that, back then anyway, you had to be sort of 40 or 50 to have any credibility.
Yep.
How do you sell someone a home if you don't own a home and you're living with mum and dad?
It's a great point.
So I mean, the answer is you can, but you kind of back then there wasn't as many young people, but to see that there definitely was an influence.
It's amazing to see. I really love it. A bit of a theme, right? We had Jeremy Langston a few weeks ago, and he ran a really successful business, and also went on scoured his portfolio and continues to do so, like a really high level. And then you find out where they're from. He was a battler in Ipswich, and I had no idea. From Mackay, then Ipswich. So it's a bit of a theme. Some of our guests, we've chatted to some really high performers on here. It always seems that, I guess, it builds that grounding, right, and that resilience from your upbringing. I find, and
people find it really inspirational because people can see a lot of themselves in Jeremy's story, and no doubt in Dane's story, and go, okay, well, gee, Dane wasn't, a Rhodes Scholar, or do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it's fantastic. I mean, he was probably pretty smart. He's probably underselling himself over there. But it is inspiring, even for us, mate. We got inspired after Jeremy's, and I'll be even more inspired after today. So it's funny where life can take you, isn't it? And as you say, to have that really good mentor like that business or your working dad, like that's huge, because that can really shape you in those early working years, right?
Yeah, and absolutely.
I was going to say, do you have a bit of that now in your head? You want to be, you want to pass the baton on to people who look up to you.
I feel it's an obligation. Like it's you think about the generation, and even it doesn't have to be whether they're young or old or middle aged, doesn't matter. It's if you're new to real estate and your career is in our hands, it's a responsibility, because that's the way that Don viewed me, and he viewed others around him. I mean, he would say things to a lot like me. If I was starting to get a bit of success, he would say things to me like, mate, I think you're starting to think you've arrived.
Yeah, love it.
And I'd say, what do you mean arrived? Well, the destination you're at now is not your potential. So stop acting like
you've hit your potential.
Yeah. And he probably his way of saying, hey, you're getting a bit cocky, which young people, being an auctioneer out there, you kind of need a bit of confidence.
Yeah.
But it was great to have that person. He'd come to an auction and he'd pull out a notepad right in the middle of an auction, and he'd start writing things down. And I'm up there going, it's pretty disconcerting, when you're doing an auction and you're belting out your spiel, and then you see your mentor pull out his notepad, and he's not writing something good down.
That's right.
And then
you're trying to block him out.
And have you ever had that experience where someone says, hey, I've got some feedback for you?
Yeah.
It's never positive.
No.
Yeah.
And he'd say, mate, you said this, you said that, sharpen this up. But just to have someone there actually doing that. And I always thought, he was a big fan of Wayne Bennett. Interestingly, you mentioned that.
Yeah, right.
And it's interesting because you think about people that are tough on you. They're only tough on you, like your parents, because they love you.
It's a tough
and
love.
They actually want you to do well. It's so easy to say, hey, mate, you're doing well. That's awesome. High five. But it's actually, people want guidance and they want to be corrected and directed. They want that. You're not always right. But if you've got a willingness to be coached, and I still do. I want to be coached, and I want to be, sometimes it's mistakes that coach you, and you kind of guide your way through just by the lessons you learn.
Unreal. So it seems as though a key takeaway there, Dane, is it sounds like find mentors or absorb yourself into feedback and growth.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing is, I saw a post yesterday. I don't know whether you saw it, but and he actually corrected it. But a trainer put up a post yesterday, and it was quite. It was meant to be offensive. I get what he was trying to do, but it said something like, if you're don't trust a fat leader. I don't know whether you saw that.
No.
And there was a huge furor over it about, mate, that's a bit, derogatory and whatever. And what the point he was trying to make is, hey, leaders need to be congruent, and if you're giving advice to someone, you need to have all your ducks in a row. And the funny thing is, I made a comment. I don't necessarily agree with that, because the point was made that Warren Buffett, okay, he eats, I wouldn't say he's in peak physical condition,
No.
so he's not going to be your personal trainer, but he's certainly going to be the person who talked about money.
Yeah.
So, you've got people that have different aspects of their life absolutely sorted, and it's very rare to find someone with everything sorted.
Yeah, totally.
Like my personal trainer, he's awesome, and he smashes me, and he's fantastic, and I can ring him, and I'm privileged to have him in my life because he's my resource with that.
Yes.
Now, I might go somewhere else for, advice on investing or whatever, and that's a skill set, isn't it? And I think that's the thing we've got to keep in mind is we kind of prejudge people based on this idea of perfection. But I reckon when you're finding mentors, you kind of got to go, well, what part of my business life am I actually seeking mentorship in? The person who's a great parent, they might be different to the person who's a great, investor or a great business person or a recruiter or a prospector. I think you got to find multiple people in your life that are great mentors.
It's great advice, isn't it? Even I find I do a lot of rugby league coaching as well, mate, and you talk to players about who are the best coaches you've had and what are some of the traits, and what a lot of them keep coming back to, and this can be related across business and whatever, is that they're always really honest with me. So they're not the guys who are always patting them on the back, as you say, and telling things you want to hear. You tend to want to stay away from those sort of mentors or coaches. They're the ones that are prepared to have the hard, honest conversations with them, because ultimately that's going to make them better. It's the same in your business. And we spoke off camera about that, about getting the right people and letting them do their thing. But sometimes you've got to rein them in as well.
And it's different. What I find too, and I'm still learning this, it's very different how you do that with men and women, Mars and Venus.
Yes.
So you can go to a young guy and you can say, mate, you're being a wanker.
Yep.
You try that. You try doing that with a middle-aged female, and see how that goes.
Yeah.
It's you got to change your style a bit when you're coaching, and obviously rugby league, you're coaching young men.
Yeah.
And then you've got to go, okay, well, how would I go? I've always wondered how Wayne Bennett would go if he had like a netball team in their 40s and 50s.
So how do you? That's a really good point.
It would be interesting. He'd probably still go really well.
Yeah,
'cause
that's
he's smart.
right. So in your role, mate, in your business, because you've got a lot of staff, which we'll talk about, is that something that you realised in your own mind that, geez, I've got a bit of a problem here, or not a problem, but there's a bit of a disconnect? How do you actually go and make yourself better so that you can actually deal with the middle-aged 40-year-old lady as opposed to the 22-year-old young punk that potentially you might have been when you were 22, so you can see a bit of you in them, whereas you've never been a middle-aged woman. So that's hard.
It is hard.
What do you do to go and make yourself better to be able to deal with those situations?
Well, the first thing is to acknowledge that you need to learn and grow,
Yep.
and to understand that I think a fair bit of it does have to do with emotional intelligence.
Yes.
Which is an interesting topic in itself, because there's people who will never get that, and there's people who, and rightfully so, typically speaking, without generalising in professions, but engineers don't necessarily, translate to people managers.
Yep, 100%.
And I think if you're a natural people manager, you should be able to have some instinct around how you should be communicating just by how it's being received. But yeah, you just got to learn, and I think you ask feedback. I mean, I've got people in my business, men and women, and I ask them, how would you like that message to be delivered? Would you like me to tell you straight away and hey, be brutal, or would you like me to dance around it? And some of them will say, hey, no, just dance around it, because I know I won't react well to that.
Right.
So I think that's part of it.
Yep.
But it's what happens is you make mistakes, you learn, and you correct the way you communicate.
I heard a really good one there, Dane, around emotional IQ. Love it. And I think that reflecting on all the relationships I've got and where I continue to go, I find the people who have got emotional IQ and awareness of the situation, like at hand, seeing what's in front, the personality type they're talking to, the empathy for them. And I learnt big one, Cross, I think I was telling you, when I was a bit younger, we're used to, from age 5, sport, you get told what to do, you just do it, you get on with it. And our operations manager, he's from the military background, and mate, we got a mission. We just move and we do it. Resilience happens. It's all good. I can tell them direct. And then you realize some people, not everyone takes feedback or can respond, get things done in a certain way, right? So you got to understand everyone's got different upbringings as well. Like, and I've found out, I've done a lot of learning on it, is like their childhood, their upbringing, their experiences. So Dane made a really good point there. It's a really good key takeaway. Have that emotional IQ, whatever business or whatever job you're in. If there is friction with someone, maybe have some empathy and think maybe they just need to hear it differently coming out of my mouth, potentially. You know?
I heard a great thing about communication. Communication's not about what you think the message is. It's how it lands on the other person's ears.
Yeah.
So you might think, I told them that.
Yes.
Well, what did they hear? You know, what that person hears is actually the most important thing.
Yeah, and
it's a great thing to keep asking yourself is how did that land on the person's ears?
I love that, because it can sometimes, well, not sometimes, a lot of the time it's around the delivery style, the tonality, the body language, the eye contact. Yeah, it's all that, isn't it? You know, and I reckon Dane mentioned before about, and I'm big on this, is situational awareness. I reckon it's a bit of a trait or a bit of an art form to be able to read the room and be that good judge of character. And mate, we're so aligned because like I've dealt with a lot of engineers in my property investing advising roles, and as you can imagine, so analytical. Yeah. But you put them in people to people, like generally, and to all the engineers listening, I'm sure you understand where I'm coming from. It's a generic statement, but they're not great to deal with on a personal level, are they? It's an awkward conversation generally, and they just analyse everything, and they don't have that situational awareness and that sort of social impact like a lot of us can have.
And sometimes you can present to an engineer, like you can go and actually, hey, put your presentation forward. You're going to list their home, for example, if you're a real estate agent, and you can come away from that thinking, geez, that didn't go well because you didn't get that emotional feedback. But then, of course, it went really well, but they just didn't give you that.
They don't give it to you.
They just didn't give you that feedback.
That's so true.
There's the other situation. I love that. Situational, what did you say?
Awareness.
Awareness. Because it's like if someone passes an auction in, right? Say an agent, been working really hard, the auction passes in, no bids, and they're there, you know, in the fetal position, post-auction depression syndrome kicks in, and you have to go and then, you know, it's not the right time to say. It's not the right time to coach them. You know? It's the time to cuddle them.
Yes,
you know?
that's so
So sometimes they need coaching, sometimes they need cuddling, and we all need that.
Yep.
You know, and that's a situational awareness thing.
It is.
Of the situation. Yeah. I really like that.
Yeah.
That will lead, I guess, Dane, into, you've obviously got that acumen now. Now, how did it start from, all right, you want to become a partner or director in a business? Where did that start with the Harcourts Coastal Mammoth that's here now? Where did that begin?
So what I was doing is training and auctioneering. So to give you a picture, I was going around Australia, going into an office in Canberra or Dubbo.
Remax?
I was independent now at this
Gotcha.
time.
Yep.
So still doing a lot of Remax auctions, but independent auctioneer, independent trainer. I was doing events. I did an event called Ignite for a few years in a row.
Oh, yes. I remember that.
Yeah. So we had, that was great, and I got to a point where I was traveling, city to city, office to office. I'd go in, I'd do a session, I'd come away, and I'd think, are they actually implementing what we're talking about?
Yeah.
Am I actually making a difference? Am I an entertainer? Am I a trainer? Have I got relationships with these people long term? You put that together with the fact that we're about to start a young family. I'm living on the coast. I want to stay on the coast. I just didn't want to be traveling on a plane 2 or 3 days a week and missing out on growing something with people.
Yep.
So that's really how it was born. And I decided, okay, we're going to do it. We're going to do it on the Gold Coast. 2011, June 1 is when we started. We celebrated our 10th year last year, 11th year this year. And it really just started with my wife, Kim, and I deciding, hey, we're going to build a business. And our first office was Mermaid Beach. Took over an existing Harcourts franchise. And our first employee was Brian Goodgame, who's still with us today. Shout out to Bright BG if he's listening.
Really?
He just did a double header sale yesterday.
Yeah.
So away we went. So we now got 90 salespeople and 150 staff. We've got about 1,500 managements, and we transact about $2 billion a year at the moment. Now I'm hoping that grows, despite market headwinds. When I say headwinds, you know what I mean. Like it's not crazy growth at the moment, but it's still very, very strong. So yeah, we're growing strong, and that's how it started.
So when you kicked off, and having that bit of, I suppose, self-analysis, as you said, like, am I making a difference? Am I a trainer? Am I, where did you land, mate, in your own mind, thinking, what am I going to bring to the table as Dane Atherton? And we're going to start this business with Kim. What's going to be my best strength to be able to grow the business? Where did you land on your own traits?
Well, 2011, if you recall, was still in the remnants of post-GST.
Yeah.
I do.
Yeah.
GFC, I should say.
It was still soft, wasn't it?
Yeah.
and,
it was.
and there was this vibe in the industry that it was just defeated.
Yeah.
There was a negativity around. So our first ever slogan was positively different. That's what we used to, so it was an internal thing which became an external thing, and we just wanted to be positively different. So we didn't cut back on training. We didn't cut back on events. We put, we were positive. For example, if we had to go through a process of demonstrating to a seller that, hey, maybe their home is not worth what they paid pre-GFC, rather than get morbid about that process, actually start to get some, not excitement around it because it's not fun, but actually start to understand that this is a really important role we've got to do here, and get a bit of structure around doing that part of your job instead of avoiding it. So just things like that where we said, well, okay, what skill set's required in this market? How can we build a real simple system that everyone can follow, and then go in there and bring people on that journey so the skill sets that they were working on and the processes they were working on were relevant to that market to actually bring them. And what we really found is, as soon as you started having communication with owners, what was interesting is we always kind of worked out back then that you were only really a 20% price reduction away from the next boom. So once you got the price right and you had an honest conversation with the owner back then, you had multiple offers. The buyers would appear.
Yeah.
So here's us thinking we wanted buyers, or wish we had more buyers, but really it was just that the prices needed to be adjusted.
Wow.
So that was a great example. So really what it was about is, okay, if I can use my training skills to bring a team together here and help them grow with the same people, then we're gonna grow something special together. And that was the energy, and hopefully that's still the energy today.
Were you, from the get-go, Dane, were you clearly working on and then in there, it doesn't sound like you were doing the listing, selling kind of thing. Straight away, were you always like, all right, I'm going to work on rather than in and build from the ground up?
I started listing and selling because of, it was interesting. The advice was, hey, list and sell from the beginning because you'll need the cash flow.
Yep.
And I wasn't flushed with funds. I was like, I wasn't undercapitalized, but I wasn't like, I wasn't sort of money to burn. And it was a situation where once I started to do it,
yep,
I realized, hang on, if I'm going to do this, I can easily get those golden handcuffs on and get trapped in the listing and selling cycle. So it was about 6 months in that I made a decision to stop selling, because I thought, well, if I'm going to build a sales business and a real estate sales business, personal sales and a business, I'll have to choose one or the other here.
Yeah, at some point, yeah.
At some point. And if I go down that path, this business isn't going to build itself on its own. So I made a decision to stop selling after 6 months, and easily the best decision we made.
How many salespeople at that point?
5.
Okay.
Interesting.
And you know what's interesting is, I remember having a coffee with a lady, Anne-Marie O'Brien. She was my coach at the time. I met her in Brisbane, and I said, well, I've got this dilemma at the moment. When do I stop? What's the perfect number? Some people said 15 agents. Some people said it's the amount of money in the bank. She said, well, where do you want your business to be long term? And I said, well, I don't want to sell. And she said, well, what's stopping you from making a decision today? And I said, well, nothing. And she said, well, make a decision today.
It's done.
And I made the decision right there at the Ascot Coffee Club.
Yeah.
Drove home and stopped selling. It was just interesting how, she led me to that point and almost gave me permission to do it.
To do it. And that's what I was going to ask you, mate. You go home from the Ascot coffee shop. What does Kim say? Because, again, knowing how wives and females sort of think, or I can talk only my wife, but generally they like stability and they know things are happening. Was Kim thinking at that point, that's fantastic, you can help grow the business? Or was she sort of thinking, geez, we're only 6 months in here. If Dane stops listing and selling, potentially we're not making as much money. What was her thoughts?
Well, I'm very lucky that Kim's always been someone that's backed me and backed us, I should say, because she's actually built the property management business, with her awesome team, not just on her own, but with a team, from 0 to 1,500. So it wasn't an issue. She was very supportive, and at that point she wasn't as involved as she is now.
Right.
But yeah, she was totally on board, mate. I'd love to say that she dragged me back if you're listening, babe, but she didn't. She didn't.
She's a good one. Yeah.
I love it because he identified he wanted to get into business, but quickly identified my skill set is working on leadership, culture, building a team from the ground up. And I heard a podcast the other day, and I've been doing a lot of learning around it. It's one of the biggest misconceptions around business is people think you got to do the technician work day to day and run the business. But to continue to scale, and we'll touch on this in a second, you actually need to allow growth for the business to scale. You need to work on it.
The best analogy in real estate, and what you're going to remember, as you guys well know, real estate offices around Australia are full of selling principles.
Yep.
I'm not suggesting that that's a bad model, but they're normally, the typical model is an agent becomes a really good agent, an above average agent, a franchise rings them up, hey, our territory is available, you'll be great at this, be your own boss, and they go, oh, great. They assume that it's the next logical stage of career progression. Sometimes, most of the time, I think that's a mistake. Mm-hmm. Because what they don't realise is the moment you go from being a real estate salesperson where your clients are sellers and buyers, and then you become a real estate business owner, your clients become real estate agents and property managers 100%. And admin people.
Yeah.
So you change industries. It's like, and the analogy I would use, if you're the DJ in the nightclub and you are the star, right? It's all about you. You rock in, you do your work. You've got a very important role because you are your energy, you are a practitioner, you're a technician, and you're doing DJ work and you're getting the accolades, waving the hands in the air, doing the job, right? Now, that DJ looks around, a busy night, looks at the $10.50 Coronas and thinks, I want a bit of this. They're coming for me. I'm gonna buy the nightclub.
Yes.
The moment he buys the nightclub or she buys the nightclub, all of a sudden, insurance, compliance, staff management, not easy to get teams, managing of other DJs, it's a whole different vibe.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden they realise that, and what happens is they're still hanging on to the sales part. They're trying to be, creative over here, and you can't do both well.
Yes.
I'm a big believer of that. You can't do both well. And something has to give. So you have to make a decision what kind of business owner you want to be. And the thing now is you got super teams.
Yes.
And you can build an amazing team within a business.
Within a business, yeah.
Without having to actually go and create and take that risk. And our job's to identify, career paths for people. And some people want to go and be ownership in a business. We've got that option. Some people want to build super teams. We've got that option. Some people want to plug in and be great practitioners and earn an awesome living, and they really enjoy the process of listing and selling real estate. I often hear people say, I want to be a business owner because I want to get off the grind. And I always laugh at that. I'm like, you're not off the grind. Like, it's just a different grind.
Different, yes.
And it's really interesting how people think that jumping out of sales into business ownership means because I don't have to do open homes now, all of a sudden it's not the case.
Different skill set, right?
Yeah.
And you guys would see that, I'm sure.
100%. And culture, teamwork, all those sorts of things. And for you, key takeaway there for any of our listeners, it seems as though have awareness around, if you're in that position, whether it's in real estate or any business, you're moving from technician, you want to become a business owner now, realize that it's either one or the other, because you can't wear all the hats.
No.
Because you'll leave no room for growth. And, I love a quote, Crossy. I heard this one the other day. As a leader, your role is to ingrain a culture deep within the fabric of the company. A good leader instills the culture ingrained in the fabric of the company. Well, and that's their sole job.
Yep.
So I see a lot of that I chat to a lot of agents and they're like, fuck, it's so good to work and blah, 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 and all that sort of stuff. So I'm noticing that he's obviously doing what I'm noticing a good leader does, is it's instill the culture in the fabric of the company.
Well, Dane said something there really, I thought, poignant, because, and I know you've heard him say this before, but for the listeners, he said that his salespeople are his clients. They're not his staff, they're his clients. Whereas when you're a listing agent, your clients are your vendors. And that's huge, because Dane's treating them as his clients. He's trying to service them. Anyone who's in a service industry knows that your clients are how you get paid. So, but a lot of people in real estate or business would view their staff as their staff, but he's viewing his staff as his clients.
The analogy I'd use is you've got to look at yourself as a hotel, a luxury hotel at that, for real estate salespeople. And if you can create that, so right to our administration team, which we call the A team, I'm in the same industry as them, which is their clients are real estate agents.
Yes.
So we often sort of use the example of a cabin crew. You get onto a flight, you got the pilot, you got the cabin crew, you got the cabin supervisor, and they're all there to create a great experience for the customer. Sometimes those customers are, on holidays, having a good time. Sometimes they're coming home from a funeral and they're angry and they're upset. We've all got to be aware that that's the business we're in, and they understand. The beautiful thing about our team is, they come in and that's sort of ingrained in them that the agent is the client. And it's not that the agent can be disrespectful. We've got awesome agents that treat our team with respect, and it's not about a hierarchical thing. It's just about how the structure actually works. Because if an agent says, I want to do 1,000 letterbox drops and I want them ready by X, Y, Z, we will accommodate that. If they want a certain style, or they want a certain amount, or they want they want their database email done on a certain time of the week, they want a certain template. Our job is to actually help them and make it easy for them to do business.
Yeah, wrapping it all up, you won't see the pilot serving your red wine, Crossy, on the plane.
That's right. Yeah, you won't see me driving the plane.
No.
So they call it driving,
Flying. Yeah.
What's some key takeaways, Dane, on a business acumen side of things that you've taken away from building teams? If someone was to ask you, Dane, what's some tips to scale a team slowly but efficiently?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I think back to, say, right now you've got, a few people in your organisation and you're thinking, okay, let's just use real estate as an example. I want to grow. The first decision is, do I have an adequate back end, meaning great support people or person, even one person is fine, that's able to actually give the service of the, of what I'm actually trying to recruit or grow.
Yeah. So it sounds like you mean like systems and processes,
systems, but even just the right people. So if you've got, say, one administrator and you got 10 agents, and you don't have a second or third or fourth administrator or a business manager or a finance department or a contracts manager, it's very hard for you then to go and get another 10, because you probably find the vibe in that team is under pressure, not getting work done. So the service offering you're giving that's not going to inspire you to go out there and recruit. Yeah. I always think if you want to go and recruit someone, you have to believe that what you've got's actually amazing. And it doesn't mean that it's the biggest necessarily, but you've got good people that have got the right attitude that can help someone grow. So I found when we first started, we had a person that joined us that wasn't the right fit, the very first administrator we had. And then the second person we employed is a lady by the name of Rachel Reeves, who's still there. And she was a gun, still is a gun. She is our financial controller now. The moment that I had Rachel, I felt confident to go out there and just one person.
Yeah.
I felt confident to go out there and recruit. So when I made calls now, all of a sudden, I believe in my heart, I've actually got one of the best administrators on the coast. So I'm out there recruiting with that passion, and that it was just me believing. Now I could have just flicked the switch and pretended, but I kind of had to believe it. So that's the first thing. And then the other thing you got to realize is once you start to grow, you're going to have what we called, and we talked about this before, Matt, is good problems. Yeah. You have to understand that growth creates good problems. When you have good problems, irritations, you have to go, fantastic. I'm so happy I've got these, because if I didn't have these,
means you're not growing.
It means you're not growing. Good example of that, right, is when you have, say, 5, 10 people, and then you get to 20, 30, what you're going to get from some of those people, it's not the same. You're going to get that. That's a good problem. Now, it might not be the same, but it doesn't mean it's not better. So you got to really try and work hard to keep those 5 or 10 that you had at the beginning connected as much as possible.
Yep.
And if you picture an analogy of a fire, you got a big fire in the middle. You got these big logs. This is Gilbert Anoka from the All Blacks. I'm stealing it from him.
Yeah, nice.
He's got a fire, and you've got picture these big logs, and the logs are wet on the outside, but they're warm on the inside. And as these logs get pulled closer to the fire, the fire represents your culture and connection. You've got to bring people in. People on the outside who are feeling a bit disconnected, you've actually got to go towards them and bring them in. And that's just like, that's not anything other than just, hey, how you going? You know, I notice you're a bit off with this. You know, what can we do to help? Can we get behind you? Help them grow their business. I find Dr. Sale, you know, and Dr. Listing, you know, when they get a listing and they get a sale, it really helps momentum.
It's the medicine, yeah.
Let's get off this track and let's help grow your business. So bring them in, and you find if you really got a good culture, you've actually got people on that inside bringing the people in as well as you.
Yeah, and
we spoke about that actually a couple of weeks ago. I think we were talking about teams and whatever, and we sort of chatted around how difficult is it, mate, when you've got a lot of these guys, high achievers, guys and girls that are really high achievers, and you might have some other agents that you've recruited clearly because they're good people, and that's, you've got a track record of doing that. But let's say, for example, they might not necessarily be going that well for a short period of time in business, might have lucked out on a few listings. How do you keep that wet bit of the log at the end, that are really important part of the team and you want in the team, and they're looking on the inside of the fire and all these other salespeople are flying and doing well? How hard is it in your role to sort of keep them motivated? And you could say to them, how you going? Bad luck there, you missed out. But how hard is it, and over what period of time do you have to keep chipping away at those guys to keep them really engaged?
Yeah, it's a great question. And the thing is, you can't overestimate what you can do, but you can't underestimate it either. Yeah. So, you know, they've got to do the work to get themselves out of it, but you've got to create the environment where they feel like they want to do the work, and the work is worth doing. So I think it's about firstly, it's identifying that, having the awareness. I mean, some people have people like that in their business and they don't even know. And you know what? I might have that now. For all I know, I'm not naive enough to think that there's someone in my business right now that's thinking like that. I mean, if you've got 90 salespeople, statistically there probably is. So even having this conversation now, I'm like, geez, I'm going to go back and have a chat to them all. But you've got to be, I think if you care enough, you can't fake that. If you care enough, you'll actually go and try and find those people that need that connection. And I had an example recently where someone was a bit off, went and saw them. There was an issue. We dealt with it. He's been amazing since.
Yeah, right.
And it was like identifying it, going towards it, and having that discussion. And it's like, wow, I'm glad we talked about this, because now we're back in love. And you know what? When you're back in love and you know you're in the right place and your leader's there to support you and you know they're to support you and they're advocates for your business, I tell you what, it eliminates those distractions and you're actually achieving great things.
Yep.
The other point I'd make, and I don't want this to come across like, you know, we have a great team and great synergy, but I remember we had Wayne Bennett, speaking of Wayne, come and speak to our team 2 years ago. And one of the points he made is, which really shocked me, but it actually made total sense, is he said one of the biggest illusions or misconceptions with a great team is that everyone likes each other. And he said that, you know, he was talking about Souths.
Yeah, right.
At the time he was with Souths, and he said, you know, he goes, there's people in Souths that I wouldn't necessarily invite for a barbie. He goes, but there's people I would, and they're not necessarily people who, you know, the people who I like and don't like, it really has nothing to do with their rugby league performance. He said that the important thing is whether you like someone or don't like someone is none of our business. It's whether you do your job, you know, and if you do your job, that's what matters. Because we can all, and you've got no right, if you don't like someone, you've got no right to bring that into the job.
Yeah.
And I thought that was really powerful because our team was sitting there listening to this going, yeah, okay. Because it's unrealistic to think.
Every single you're right. Hey,
people think team synergy is everyone like going to each other's house for Barbies, and it's not how it works. It's about being respectful. And you might not like my personality, I might not like your personality. We might rub each other up the wrong way, but I tell you what, we'll work together if we have to, and we'll get the job done. Yep. And you know what happens when you have that attitude? You actually discover, I actually do quite like this person. Yeah. I find that's really interesting how that evolves.
Yeah.
I always use the analogy too with I know we'll talk rugby league analogies, right? And can I mention players' names? Like,
of course.
Okay, so I always, when I talk to our team about, say, we identify someone who might want to join the team. And, you know, you might get, I don't know about that person, they're a bit aggressive or they're a bit that. I always say, well, you know, I remember when Greg Bird signed with the Titans, right? And I remember as a Queenslander, when I watched Origin, I used to despise Greg Bird, right? Because I used to think he was a grub, he was this, he was that. as soon as he joined the Titans, he went from being a grub to being, he plays hard. You know, he's
Different way of looking at it.
He's a character.
Yeah.
And I thought, isn't it amazing how as soon as he wears the colours that I support, I was like, wow, this guy's one of us. And it's amazing how that has happened over the years where you've had people on the fringe who you think, I don't know about that. That when you back your gut and go, no, I think this person, the reason we don't like him is because he's actually good or she's good. Quite often the case. In saying it, there are people who are culturally bad, but I always think of that and think, how many people do we dismiss because we think they're actually really good competitors, but they're actually, if they joined your team, that'd be amazing.
That's a great point.
It is, hey, and again, overarching it all, sounds like Dane's allowing space to oversee that and be able to work on the wood that's not on fire. You know, it's all part of it. You can't be making the flame, putting the matches in and doing all the work and finding new wood. It's again, I love what he said around you're either this or that, because when you've got space to look at it from above, you can really help and give the support needed for those people to ignite. But also I like around culture, it seems as though if you've got those people in the middle who are firing, if you've instilled a good culture within a company and organisation, they will live that through you to bring them yourself again.
Yeah, the other point I'd make, you're talking about, business advice before. We've got 90 salespeople. 87 of them I had to call to join our team.
Is that right?
Now, a lot of people think, they'll come to you. And there's some examples of that, but very, very few. So I think the thing to understand is if you're building something, in our case of obviously real estate business, it's one person at a time. And it's one phone call at a time. And I could almost tell you, I could actually go through our entire team and I could almost show you the path, the initial phone call, the coffee. Some of them were 6 months, some of them were 6 years, some of them have been 11 years in the making. And it's just continuing those processes and relationships one person at a time. But that does require, if you do that, 100 times or 200 or 400 times, it requires that 5 seconds of courage 100 times. And I think that's what people can sometimes think too, with people who have a business or they're successful in one part of their career. They think, that just comes to them and it happens to them and it's natural and they don't have any fear. And that's not true. Like, there's 5 seconds where you go, I'm not gonna do this. And I've got plenty of examples where I didn't want to make the call and I was nervous, genuinely nervous. But when you make the call, it's amazing what happens when you just start to get over that. And it's that Mel Robbins thing as well, the 5 second rule. Love that because it's so true. As soon as you get a thought of what you should do, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, just do it.
Just do it.
Huge. I love it. It's interesting, isn't it? Like, so many analogies here, and to stay on the sport or the rugby league analogy, like talent ID, talent identification. And you've got, again, made a great track record of doing that. How much time do you spend looking at what competitors are doing, obviously from a viewpoint of for your own successful business, but for that exact reason, to say, okay, gee, that guy or girl over there is doing some really good things. There's going to be 5 seconds of courage coming soon because I'd like him or her on my team. How much time do you put into that?
Oh, heaps. Yeah, not so much. Well, I mean, the thing about the competitor thing is interesting because when you're at your worst, they're enemies. When you're at your best, they're worthy adversaries.
That's gold.
Which if you're at your worst, they're an enemy. If you're at your best, you don't see it that way. You like, and if you want to be like totally enlightened, we're all here to make each other better. And if you think about like, Rafa and Federer as an example, would they be as good as they are without each other?
Great point.
And that's hard to get your head around when you have a loss. Or you but I kind of say, okay, if you are, and don't get me wrong, we love a bit of competition and we love a bit of banter, and I mean some people in our office love giving it to our competition, and we all do, as I'm sure they do with us. But that's the thing that I'd say is you got to try and maybe take your higher self to that concept and go, well, okay, if I'm going to approach it, I can't just say, oh, well, they're crooks or they're this or they undercut or whatever. You have to actually acknowledge that some of them are doing some cool things, and you can learn from that. I know they've copied a lot of things that we've done, and we will do the same with them. So why can't we all just learn and get better? And What I do find too is you tend to attract your tribe.
Yeah.
And like it takes you a while to work that out. Even with clients, there's some clients out there that just won't gravitate towards some agents, and that's okay.
That's okay.
Yeah.
I'm sure you'd find that.
Yeah.
You know? And that's a great thing to just own that and go, you know what, that person might not be for us, but I tell you what, that person is. That person might even be in someone else's business that you know, is one of yours. And I look at that as liberating that person, bringing them out of that environment where they're not suited and actually bringing them into yours where they're more suited.
I was going to say, Dane, we get a lot of, just quickly, real estate agents, obviously, listening in on this podcast. 3 character traits you've noticed with the best of the best in agents.
Yeah, well, that's a great one. The first one is they're stone cold killers. And I don't mean that as they may not come across as that, but they're competitive. They like to win. And if you're driving along your suburb and you're looking at competitor signs and you're thinking, oh, good for them, or you're driving along seeing competitor signs saying, you get that feeling in your stomach like that should be me. Why didn't I get that? And you're competitive and you want to own a market and you want to be the best. I think that's a really important, only because if you don't have that, it's very hard to get yourself up to do what you need to do.
That's intrinsic, isn't it? Yeah.
It's not to say that everyone loves awards. I'm not talking about that kind of competitiveness. I'm talking about you got to want to win.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because it is a competitive industry by its nature. Like we're getting called in on a daily basis, and we're often up against 1, 2, 3, 4 people.
Yes.
So there's that part of it. The second part, I think, is they know who they are. They're authentic, and I mean that because when the thing about real estate, I really believe that real estate should be a reflection of society. So not everyone's a slick, 25-year-old, no socks. Great to see you got socks on today too, by the way. Not everyone's going to be that person. You've got middle age, you've got older, you've got mothers, you've got fathers, you've got single blokes, you've got younger ladies starting out. You've got all different shapes and sizes, walks of life. And that's really important. You got slick people, you got country people. I really believe there's a place for everyone because that's a reflection of society. But the reality is people want to deal with who's doing the business.
Yeah.
So they don't necessarily good bloke, not a good bloke, doesn't really come into it. What comes into it is, if I'm listing my home, are you the person that's demonstrated social proof, or do you have a relationship, which trumps everything, but are you the person that I believe is actually the person doing the business? I always look at a 5-year-old should be able to go drive through a suburb, get online, open the paper, whatever it is, choose your medium and say, geez, that person's doing well. And my kids are at that age where they're aware of real estate agents, and we talk about
Your
it at home.
brand
Geez, Dad, Ray White's doing well in that area. They give it to me.
Back
And
to
it's
your
like,
room.
you know what? That's it. That's it's as simple as that.
Yep.
If they can see it, the client can see it.
Very true.
So it's a fascinating thing to unpack. I've always been fascinated with that question, how you can have a couple of people in the same market, same office even, same database, same brand, same systems, but drastically different results. And really, if you look at it, if you could be world-class at one thing in real estate, it's the ability to generate opportunities.
Yeah.
Or attract opportunities.
Yep.
Attract is really difficult to master.
Yep.
Generates where we all have to start.
That's the hustle.
That's the hustle. And you know what? The other thing is most people drastically underestimate the volume of work required.
Yes.
When I started, I'd do 100 letterbox drops, right? 100. I'd go back to the office. I'd charge the Ericsson. Any minute now, right?
Yeah.
And you'd go,
phone will ring.
You go any minute now. And it's like, that's delusional.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But that's what you thought.
You do 10 before 10, you're kidding yourself.
Yeah.
Right? It's got to be, like, if you've got no stock right now or little listings right now, it's 100 calls a day. And if you're not making 100 calls a day, someone else is making 100 calls a day.
Yeah.
And that's just that's just the reality. There's so much at stake in our industry, millions of dollars in gross commission, and it's a very competitive industry. And it's no longer are we just going to go, oh, well, I sold them 5 years ago, they'll come to me, or I sold the one next door. That's another thing, that entitlement. I sold one 2 doors down. Surely they know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, because some 25-year-old at night has called them and said, "Hey, one sold down the road," before you can even do it.
Yeah. He's on the kitchen table with the Form 6, eh? Sit
The
sign.
opportunistic.
I mean, the other thing is to remember that our primary job is not to sell property. It's to list property. And, you know, that's just the truth. It's to list and market property.
Yep.
Once, you know, the buyer part of it, I mean, a lot of vendors want to say, what do you say to buyers? And it's really the process of creating competition that is a negotiation process. But, you know, our primary job is not to sell them, it's to find homes to sell.
Yeah.
And when you get that, do you get into the office every day and go, where's my next listing? Or do you get into the office the next day and go, oh, well, how do I get back to these buyers and, you know, manage?
Yeah.
That's why people like you exist, because that's a service industry.
Different side of
you
it,
know?
yeah.
That's where they're going to get the service.
It's interesting.
And they pay you, right? And, you know.
Yeah. It's interesting.
Can I just ask, Dane, so you made a really good point with, you know, the old days, 100 letterbox drops, Chargy Erickson. What about now, mate, when you bring new staff in? Obviously, you attract staff and recruit staff because you think they're good people and good operators. But as we spoke about, sometimes people have a dip, have a few lean months or whatever. Your management style, and this is just not for real estate, this is for all businesses. How's your management style? You know exactly what needs to happen for success. Like you've lived it yourself. You've got agents that do it. You've got a great business. At what point do you sort of step in and say, hey, you know, him, her, whoever it is in the office, have you made your 100 calls? Like I'm assuming there's plenty of agents. You don't need to even worry about that. They know it. But what's your style, mate? You don't strike me as a micromanager sort of a guy, but how often do you step in? How often do you step out? I think it's a really good learning for a lot of business owners.
Yeah, it's a cracker, because this came up at this business owners conference that we went to last week, and I think people would be staggered how little imposing we do in other people's businesses, unless, like other people's as in our agents, unless we're asked to. So, you know, most people want accountability until they get it.
Yes.
And when they get it, they're like,
Yep.
And, you know, I always look at it this way. Like, if you've got a dairy farm, right, and you've got cows, and you've got grass, clean water, fences, that's your job, right, to keep all of that in order. Now, some of those cows are going to they're going to make a decision because they want a better life, right? They want to produce milk. They're going to eat the grass, drink the water, produce the milk. They're going to follow the system. You can't get in it's very difficult for you to get in that cow's head and go, do you want this bad enough? You know, like it's not, that's not where we live. We don't live in that space, because we're creating an inspirational environment but it's only for people that have already made a decision that they're going to be successful. If someone doesn't do that, we've got people in our business go through ruts and they know that they have to get out of it. And that's a different thing. That's more like arm around the shoulder.
Yes.
We're with you. We've got this. But you can't do your head in about people that don't want to do the work. You know, if someone's not going to do it, like, you just can't have that energy, because you are going to go mad.
Yeah.
And I know there's some smaller offices out there, the principals call me and we chat, and they just go, look, I've got, 7 agents here and we just can't seem to hit. And I'm like, well, your production's probably not going to come from those 7 people, your growth. It's probably going to come from other people. The great thing is, when other people come in, some of those 7 will make a decision to lift.
Yes.
Like, that's just their decision.
Yes.
But it's an empowering thought to know that it's up to you if you want to do it. And if what we do in our business is follow the energy. So if someone's having a crack and they really are ripping in, I find they engage us, they bring us in, they talk to us. It's actually the opposite when someone's not going that well. They actually don't want you to know what's going on. And it is interesting, because if you go and impose yourself on that person, you can actually drive them away a bit.
Yeah.
And you say you've got to get them to a stage where, hey, when you're ready to go, when you're ready to talk, let's go. But it's going to be about a plan. It's not going to be about excuses. It's going to be about getting you on track, and let's go and do it properly together. And really helping them understand, for them to get out of it, it's no one's coming to save you. It's going to be you.
It's got to be intrinsically there.
Yeah.
You're going to make a decision to do it. But it's a very it's a path to frustration and insanity. I remember hearing that Jim Rome quote. When he was a young guy, he had a sales business. And he said, "I'm going to make these people successful if it kills me." And he says it nearly killed him, because you can't make people successful. They've got to want to do it.
Well, that's so interesting, because people ask me, what makes a good coach, like rugby league coach, and I always say, good players And, that's not the answer people want to hear. No, I get that. But, what's the technical aspect or the motivational side? I say, look, that's all well and good. It's exactly what you're saying, Dane. Like, if you've got the wrong person there, you could have all the pump-up music, all the motivational stuff, bring in all the experts. But at the end of the day, if they're not intrinsically driven to do better, then it's a waste of time, isn't it?
You've got to recruit a team to win a premiership.
Yep, yeah.
That's the decision you have to make.
They're
going to be premiership players.
Yep.
And those guys or girls or men or women, they are in our business. Those people are people we've identified that we know those people coming in. It's not about putting people in there and making them good. It's about getting good people in there, and then that in itself will create its own environment.
Yeah, I love that.
And sometimes it's actually keeping people out.
Yes.
Like negativity. There's some people that are performers, but they're just better off on their own.
Yep.
I always think about the stables, and some racehorses just kick other horses. They might be great horses, but they're just not. They're not conducive to a team environment. Sometimes they'll end up doing their own little independence, and that's exactly where they should be. A lot of those people, because that's going to be the right environment for them.
Yeah.
Love it. That's really, really good.
Tell you what, he's got some good analogies. This hasn't
love
he?
it. Love
I thought we had a few.
You started
good ones.
it.
Love a good analogy.
I'm just trying to keep up.
As I said, we could talk for hours. We'll have to wrap this up shortly.
Yeah.
Mate. This is gold. I'm soaking in a lot of this for personal, and mate, unreal.
Nice. Yeah.
Just lastly, Dane, buyers out there in the marketplace. It's a field me and Crossy know well. Do it day to day. What's your observation and I guess tips for those buyers who have friction in the buying process, or they're not finding what they're wanting? Like, what do you notice and observe with buyers out there in the marketplace?
Yeah, that's a great one. I was watching a market pulse I did at the beginning of the year in January, and I watched it back thinking, what did I say? And I actually said any buyer expecting the market to fall off a cliff this year is going to be rudely, sadly mistaken. And that was a pretty bold thing to say in January with all of the talk around. And it's probably the only market pulse that I've ever done that's right. Pre-COVID, get out.
Yeah.
40% later. But I think the thing I see with buyers is they let 10, 20, 50 grand, whatever it is, percentage of the transaction, they let that stop them from actually owning an investment that's a cracking investment, or a home, even worse, that they're going to spend a long amount of their time in. It's like, don't let that stop you. And it's hard to say that when you're an agent trying to sell them, hey, it's only 20 grand, good on you.
Yeah.
But it's like, don't let it. If you had paid full list price for anything 3 years ago and not haggled on the price, but just bought quality real estate, you'd be fine, right? Now, I'm not saying don't try and negotiate, but don't let the 10s and 20s and 50s stop you from owning a piece of real estate that you actually want to be in. Because you could steal something that you hate. You could steal something that you don't like. Property's not just about, buying well and, making money. It is actually something that's one aspect of it, but it is actually something we spend our lives in. And that's often underestimated when people get in this buying zone. And sometimes, Matt, as you would know, mate, that's about them adjusting their expectations of what they think they're going to get, because they often hark back to that one property they missed that sold for X, and they're always trying to compare everything else to that.
To that one, yep, 100%.
And so I would say, hey, let go of that one that's gone, or knock on that person's door and offer them more. With Matt, of course.
Yes, that's right.
But I would just say, don't sweat a little bit more for the sake of owning something that you're ultimately going to have your family in, and it's going to give you awesome memories and a great place to live.
We always talk about it as well, isn't it? You got to understand. I always give clients feedback on first question I always ask before meeting is the why behind the move, the purchase, the investment, and whatnot. Because when it comes crunch time, when emotion is heightened, and you got the auctioneer and the agent in your face, and you got to remember why in the first place. People lose track of the why when the heat's on.
Yep.
And it's a big part of money. We understand that, but at the end of the day, you're exactly right. That's why people outsource their help sometimes, to keep that emotion in check, and remember, hey, the reason you're doing this is because of X. Opportunity cost versus that.
That's right.
It's what? Oh, you nailed it on the head, I feel.
Do you want to win the negotiation, or do you want to own the property?
Yeah. Well, that's as you know, Shrams, I always say, think with the end in mind.
100%.
And the end is, if you're going to be there 20 years, like what Dane's saying, think with that in mind. Don't think about the now.
Oh, it's fair. It's funny, isn't it? But
as we wrap up, mate, before I let you go, I really want to ask you and give you guys a plug. Harcourts Coastal. Srams and I are both Palm Beach residents. Mate, there's some big signage sitting around 7th Ave and corner of Gold Coast Highway there. Some exciting times ahead for yourself and the business. And do you want to give us a bit of an
Southern GC for life. We're coming to Palm, and we've got some fantastic partners in that business. Myself, Rob Ford, obviously overarching Harcourts Coastal business, but we're in business with Ed Cherry, who's been with us for over 12 months now, doing awesome things in the luxury southern market. As we have Katrina Walsh, who's joining us as a partner in that business, who has been with us 11 years. Very, very dominant down that part of the coast.
Indeed.
And both extremely passionate about that end of the coast and have really been pushing for this expansion in the southern market. And there's no doubt, I mean, it is you ask anyone in Queensland that knows property, the southern Gold Coast is a huge growth area, and we're really thrilled to be opening up. It's very exciting times.
It's unreal, isn't it? And lastly, we'll chat around a bit of a legacy piece, Crossy, but I want to know from a business side of things, where do you go? Where is, they always say it's not the destination, it's the journey. What's it for you with business?
Yeah, it's interesting. So when we first started, I said in 10 years, I wanted to grow GCI by $1 million a year and property management by 100 a year. So I wrote down 1 million, 2 million, 3 million, 4 million. So it effectively would have meant that in 10 years we would have done 10 million. And I honestly, if you had said to me, cash that check right now, I would have said, done. That would have been fantastic. So 1,000 managements, 10 million GCI in 10 years was the goal that I wrote down. What I realised really quickly, forget that. That's just a number, an arbitrary number.
Yep.
It's actually about the process of enjoying growth.
100%.
So I know I enjoy growth. Now, if you look at those numbers now, it's 1,500 managements after 11 years and 50 million GCI. Now, I never would have written down 50 million in my wildest dreams.
Would have been like a telephone number.
Yeah, it would have been it probably would have gone, good on you. I wouldn't have believed it.
Yeah.
And I believe it now, and I know that 100 million is the next target, but not because of the number, because of the business and people we're going to have to become to do that.
Yeah.
That's kind of the goal. Why can't we do it? And I don't think a real estate business in Australia has done that yet. So that's a really cool goal to chase. And also being able to bring people on that journey. So if we're doing that, what do the people in our business have to do? They have to grow. And really it's about, to me, real estate creates this opportunity to live a great life and a great lifestyle and grow wealth and, help your friends and family and help them, bringing them along the experiences that you're creating in your life. So what's next is growth, and not for the sake of growth, but with people, growing the people we have and growing through different marketplaces.
Just lastly, I'm just really interested, what was more fulfilling, Dane? Was it when you hit that 10 million goal you had, or was it looking back on far out, I built this from this to this, and the learning you had on the way? In terms of what's hit fulfilling, because I feel a lot of people set a GCI goal or something
then they get there and it's oh, okay.
You're ready for the next thing, but you look back and you're far out, I grinded through this, and you develop that,
Yeah, it's a good one. It's a great point, because so many people have that, and I'm the same. That's why I said it wasn't like I ticked over that 10 million mark. That would have been years ago and gone, per
done
annum.
it. Yeah.
Would have gone, oh, wow. We've arrived. That's fantastic. I think it is. I think what you're going to realise is it's not about that. It's about actually just enjoying what you do and enjoying the process and the effort, not the result. The effort and the process and the challenges and the growth. That's where the gold is. It's not the money. I mean, everyone goes, well,
it's the byproduct.
Easy for you to say.
I guess it's the byproduct, right?
It is. It really is, and it really is the byproduct. And if you can approach it that way, it's a much just doing something for money. You can. I mean, anyone that says money will make you happy hasn't had money.
Yeah.
And I think that it doesn't mean that it's not great and doesn't give you choices and it's not an awesome vehicle to be able to go and do cool things. But if you actually look at it, I mean, if someone said, go and, like you see George Michael, I don't know whether the late George Michael saw his documentary where he was doing Faith. This would be up your genre. Remember Faith?
Yeah, I do.
1987?
Yeah.
Right. Way past you, way before you. So Faith was a huge album. I remember as a kid listening to it going, oh, this guy's amazing, the next Michael Jackson. And during the Faith tour, he actually, right at the end, he shut it. He just couldn't do it. And because he was making all the money in the world, and there's a song that he wrote where he says, I got everything I thought I wanted, and I wasn't happy.
Yeah.
And he got the money, he got the fame, he got all that stuff, and realised he didn't want to do that. He just wanted to write music. And the next album he did, he didn't want to tour. He didn't want to do any promotion, and he went to court with his record label because he actually just wanted to enjoy the process.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah.
And there's a saying that success eats success. You know, when you become successful, the trappings and the distraction that comes along with that can sometimes actually erode, the very thing that you started to enjoy. And how many times do you hear that?
Yeah, you do.
Yeah, so never forget that it's just enjoying what we do and not overcomplicating it, not getting distracted.
Yep.
Like Jim Carrey wishes everyone was rich and famous so they realise it's not the answer.
Yeah, that's right.
Oh.
You like that one, don't you?
It's a good one.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But, it's
so
easy
true.
for someone who's rich and famous to say that.
Exactly.
But
Isn't
I
it?
understand that.
Yeah.
I don't want to be rich and famous, or I want to be rich, but I don't want to be famous.
Yeah.
But not because of any other reason other than being able to help people around you and choices.
Unreal.
And, mate, from the outside looking in, Dane, mate, you're in the sweet spot. You've got a great business, mate. You're very humble, really good operator, mate. It's obviously a pleasure having a chat to you. What's next? So how long do you see yourself sort of doing this for? Is it something that like Kim's still really passionate about, sort of being in there entrenched in the office? I know you've helped set a couple of the commercial boys up that we had on the show a number of months ago. Things like that. Do you see yourself doing this is it 5 years, 10, 20? Is it just until the music's in you?
Yeah, exactly. Yep. And I don't know the answers to that. I can't see it being anytime soon. Don't
awesome.
stitch me up either because I want to stay hungry.
Yeah.
So the thing is, it's not about. And look, the thing is, this is probably a topic for another show, but you do go through cycles in business. Of new business energy.
Yep.
Absolutely pumping, and then plateau, and then from plateau you can either decline or grow.
Yep.
And growth is a decision at that point. So we're in that position now where we're making a conscious decision to grow, to get back into a growth phase. Because if you don't do that, we could easily say, oh, we're resting on our laurels, we've got a great business. But I know that what comes after that is decline if you don't actually make a conscious decision to grow. So that requires a little bit of healthy paranoia around staying on top and being hungry. And I think I think I've got a lot more time in me because there's so much more we want to do. When we get to 100 million GCI and basically double the operation we are now, let's have another chat on your world famous podcast at that point. The new Joe Rogan.
The way it's going, tell ya.
That's it, eh? What we do, we show up, we enjoy the process, right?
We enjoy it, all right?
Be present.
That's
be in the
it,
moment.
mate. That's exactly right. Life swings by. But, mate, I reckon we hit them with the
Definitely.
I'd be interested with this one, hey?
100%.
Be interested. But before we do that, Dane, just want to acknowledge you, mate. I know me and Crossy were genuinely interested, and I know we've both taken huge mental notes out of this one for personal, but this is going to add a stack of value to the community, and the business acumen side of things was unreal. So, mate, we'll definitely get you on it again because I believe you've got so much more growth and you're going to have so many more learnings and another 20 key analogies that I'm going to note down. So, mate, just want to thank you for coming on, Dane. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, boys. Really appreciate it. Absolute pleasure.
Awesome, mate.
Sweet. Well, mate, first thing that comes to mind, I'll hit you with our 5. Any dwelling, any location in the world, okay? First one's holiday home.
Where?
Yeah, and dwelling type. Anywhere in the world.
Fiji.
Oh, Fiji.
Fiji, good one. We haven't had that before.
What's the capital city? Suva?
It is Suva, but Nandi's the airport.
Yeah.
But Tavarua and Yamotu, world-class breaks. The Google guy bought Tavarua.
Did he? Is it like an island?
It's an island with cloud break, restaurants.
Yeah.
Sensational. I've been there a few times. It's a magnificent part of the world.
Little bungalow, little hut or something?
A little island would be good.
Don't be greedy.
What about a little blue chip cash cow investment? It's just passive. You put it somewhere in the world.
Industrial burley heads.
Yeah.
The very thing we are in right now.
Yeah.
Right? Love it. Absolutely love it. Different kind of tenant, fantastic business. Yeah, absolutely.
smart.
And you know what? The boys will love me for saying that. Shout out to the Harcourts Coastal commercial.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think Jared and Lockie might have tossed that up
Yeah,
last time
yeah.
too. But yeah, it's good. It's a very good story at the moment.
Mate, pre Kim, there's the Bucks party.
Where do we do it?
Or just where would you go?
If
you
I
had
had
your
my
time
time
back-
again,
time
Vegas,
again.
for sure.
Oh, yeah.
Where did you go?
I went to the Valley.
Well, that was the
Yeah.
mate. I'm from out near Ipswich. Oh, that was a big trip. That was a big time when
Long
you're
way,
hitting
yeah.
when you're going on the way into the valley.
Yeah, the Valley.
Just
I can't
that-
even remember where we went.
Yeah.
It's probably good.
I didn't keep the receipts. Let me put it to you that way.
Unreal. And mate, what about the forever home? Where do you think you and Kim family would park up
Well,
when it's all done?
yeah, that's a great question. I mean, we love where we are now, Mermaid Beach. And to me, my forever home would be a boat.
Yeah,
Believe it or not. Yeah.
interesting.
I love boats. I love ocean. I love the freedom of being able to go, let's pick up anchor and go somewhere else. So to be a bigger boat would be my answer to that.
Got to get a bigger boat. Yeah.
Nice little boat. Where would you sort of
More?
in Pacific Ocean, Indian Ocean? Where?
Everywhere. I'd like
Yeah,
a big
just-
enough boat to go everywhere.
just go a bit.
Let's go to Monaco.
Yeah.
Love it. How good. And mate, lastly, key tip. We touched on it a little bit, but just one key little bite-sized tip for buyers out there in the marketplace leading into this back end of the year into 23.
Well, I think if you take the view that if you buy something and hold it forever, I wish I had have actually held every property I ever bought.
Yeah.
So, you know, when you're looking at a property, look at it from that perspective. Even though you might not always be able to be in that position, I think it's a great attitude to have. And if someone had told me that, you know, many, many years ago and said, do whatever you can to keep the properties you own, it would have been a very advantageous thing for me to do.
Like it. I like it.
I hear ya.
Mate, I had a coffee with a client yesterday and she was really aware. Like, she made a bad decision in Sydney a few years ago with the wrong asset. She knew it wasn't going to be her forever home, but she got attracted to like the right now. She realizes she had to sell that to get into now we're on the journey finding her. And her key criteria is, yeah, obviously she wants to like it in the areas, but she's like, I want to have the 5 to 10 year projection plan and I want to keep it. So that's got to have a bit of criteria about it as well, which I found really smart. Like she sort of thought, she's still quite young, exactly what you said. She wants to hold it. So yeah, I'm not going to live in it forever. I'm not worried about the right now, tick a few boxes, but essentially I know that could catapult me a lot further if I'm able to hold that. And it's a smart buy rather than the decision she made in Sydney, which was the wrong asset, wrong time, wrong location, all that sort of stuff. So
You'd like today's
I love
good
that.
awareness. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, mate, thanks again for coming on, Dane. Really appreciate it. Good luck and we'll get you on the next one.
This has been super fun, boys. Thank
Good on
you.
you, mate. Thank you.